Thank you for joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
And Chris Hemke.
And you're listening to the Diesel Performance Podcast. Guys, we got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. I'm really excited to dive into the content. But Chris, why don't you hit me with what's been going on at Duramax Tuner this week?
Well, I mean, we've beaten the dead horse, kind of letting all the listeners in on, where we're at with the L5P stuff. And now it's given us some time to kind of circle back and invest a little bit more time into the Cummins side of things. So there's a 6.7 turbo that's going to be on the horizons here shortly. We've been using my 15 as kind of a test truck for that. So we just put an updated tune file in it here a couple days back and getting a couple miles on it. And it's just crazy. You have a truck that's tuned for so long, and then you do a simple little upgrade to the vehicle and you get an updated tune. And that can completely change the overall dynamic of what you experience that truck to drive like prior. So it was, I don't know. It's one of those things where upgrades, even for myself, get exciting from time to time. And, we're excited to get that turbocharger rolling out. So, I would say what's new at the shop is that turbo going to be being released here shortly.
Chris, one of the things that I think is really cool about doing the podcast and working on the more the marketing side of Calibrated Power and Duramax Tuner is how we always seem to let slip all of our secret information about new product development on the podcast.
Yeah.
This won't get brought up in a blog. This won't get brought up on the Facebook page probably for months. I know Chris says soon. It's definitely soon. But looking at product launch timelines, it's more than 30 days, I would say, is very reasonable.
Oh, yeah.
But it is here where you guys get to hear about it first. So guys, if you want your friends to also be in on getting the newest information, finding out what's happening in the diesel performance community the earliest possible, this is a really good show to refer them to, and I would ask that you please do so. One of the ways you can do that is even just invite them over to our Fans of Diesel Performance Podcast Facebook group, and that's a really easy place for somebody to come in, kind of meet some of the fans of the show and people who enjoy the show. It's a really great community of guys who do just want to help out, as crazy as that sounds. So if you have a question, nobody's going to jump on and attack you and call you a newbie or tell you to search. People are just going to come on. They're going to be very polite. They're going to answer your questions. And that's kind of the same culture that's going on over at the Canadian Diesel Community Facebook page. I got it right this week. Great job, me.
No, you still messed up. You still had to redo it.
No, it's good enough. Like a true American,
Neighbor
right?
Ward second in your family.
Well,
so that's good.
Yeah, check. So anyways, we're really excited. Those are two great places. Hey, if you're north of the border, check out Canadian Diesel Community. If you're anywhere in the world, please jump on Fans of Diesel Performance Podcast. Chris, I watch every week. We get a weird amount of international downloads. Hey, fans out in Australia, New Zealand, we love you guys. Fans up in Canada, we love you guys. But I see some crazy countries. Now, this might just be VPNs and things of that nature, just bouncing addresses around. But guys, if you are from any country you might not expect, we might not expect you to be from, please shoot me a message or jump on Fans of Diesel Performance Podcast. I know I had a really nice guy out, I want to say in the UK, reach out to me a few months ago, and it was just so cool to hear. It's one of those things I think I commonly forget that we have a pretty substantial amount of international listeners.
Yeah, that gave me the chills as you were saying it. I don't think about it like that. So that's awesome that people all over the world take the time to listen to you and I.
Yeah. It's cool. It's humbling, guys. We really appreciate it. We love doing the show. Yeah. We love all of you listeners out there. And that's why we put together such a killer show for you guys this week. We are going to have on Randy Harkema from Exergy Performance. He's going to teach. Listen, we've already recorded the interview, so you guys are going to be hearing it here. He teaches us so much that we don't know about diesel fuel additive. And Chris and I are not exactly newbies to this industry.
Yeah, it was the content was definitely informative. I learned a lot from it, and I'm not going to lie, it gave me a little bit more belief and a little bit more of a clearer vision of the importance of a good additive. So we'll dive into that when we get to that part of the show with the interview. But it's a really, really good one, guys.
Absolutely. Also, guys, today we're going to talk again with Super Tech Jeremy Garnett from Duramax Tuner. He is going to be talking about a VVT turbo diagnostic and removal and replacement. So he got into a really, really good job on an LLY that I think demonstrates a lot of the common frustrations you will have with your LLY VVT turbocharger at home. So I think this is going to be a really fun one. And then, hey, guys, at the very bottom of the show, if you haven't noticed yet, we're starting to add our Knowledge Base articles. That's Knowledge Base is from DuramaxTuner.com. It's a great place that just has instructions, how-tos, resources, videos, whatever you need to help you install your tunes, install your turbo, get things right, check error codes, all sorts of cool stuff like that. So today, I'm actually going to be bringing you the top 3 EFI Live error codes and then some potential solutions for those. So I'm really excited for today's show. But Chris, let's not let it go too far before we hear a word from our awesome sponsors. Specialty Tool of the Week. The XDP Whiff Wrench XD128 is a must-have for any GM Duramax owner. It makes removing and replacing your factory water and fuel sensor a breeze. The XDP Whiff Wrench is specifically designed for the 12-sided plastic water and fuel sensor that is easily damaged by other tools like pliers and vice grips. As an added bonus, the opposite side of the wrench is slotted to remove the plastic air bleeder screw with ease, preventing possibly rounding off the screw head. It is precision-machined 12-sided wrench that perfectly fits your water and fuel sensor. It's made out of high-quality T6061 aluminum. It's black anodized finished with an engraved XDP logo and the bleeder screwdriver on the opposite end. And of course, my favorite part, it's all made in the USA. You guys know today's other sponsor is Exergy Performance, and today we're talking about their winter blend fuel additive. Now this is SKU numbers E09 00014 and also 00016. It depends on what size bottle you want. This supports all diesel vehicles, so if you're listening to the show, you presumably will want to perk up here and go grab yourself some of this stuff. Chris and I are right now underway on doing some testing with it ourselves. Exergy Performance Diesel Additive Winter Blend provides the ultimate in protection and longevity for the diesel injectors and fuel pumps by increasing the fuel's lubricity to exceed the recommendations of the Engine's Manufacturers Association and provides exceptional protection against corrosion. The Winter Blend chemically alters diesel fuel to ensure engines remain operable in freezing climates by reducing paraffin wax precipitation. Cold starts, fuel economy, and power are also improved by increasing the diesel fuel's cetane by up to 5 points and cleaning internal components. Also, we always want to give our shout out to another one of our sponsors is WC Fab. That's Worley Custom Fabrication. Today we're talking about their 2017 to 2019 L5P Duramax 4-inch intake kit with airbox. This is WCF 100344. The WC Fab 2017 to 2019 GM L5P 6.6-liter Duramax 4-inch intake kit and airbox is the high-flow, fabricated aluminum intake pipe and airbox enclosure with dry filter assembly that replaces the restrictive plastic factory parts on your diesel. This will improve your overall engine performance. This all-new design significantly increases airflow to your turbo, producing improved horsepower and torque, quicker throttle response, and cooler intake temperatures by drawing cold air through the ram air duct and inner fender. Their all-aluminum construction features a large diameter 4-inch piping with smooth aerodynamic bends to improve intake air velocity, volume, and provide more aggressive engine and turbo sound during acceleration. High-quality hardware, silicone boot, seals, and stainless steel T-bolt clamps enclosures are optimum for durability with ease of installation. The removable airbox lid allows for easy visual inspection and maintenance of your WC Fab filter with included hydrophobic pre-filter cover. This will help keep your MAF sensor, turbo, and engine airways contaminant-free. The critical ram air duct seal has been moved to the bottom of the hood for a clean engine compartment appearance. Full assembly finished in your choice of WC Fab's signature custom powder coat colors for a look that's unique to your truck. This installs easily with basic hand tools, does not require any additional tuning, and is completely bolt-on, and it'll fit with no other required modifications. It is not compatible with the WC Fab intake resonator pipe. All right, man. Again, huge shout out to XDP for joining us as an official sponsor of Diesel Performance Podcast, Exergy Performance, and WC Fab, along with Duramax Tuner and Calibrated Power. Guys, we love you. These guys make the show possible for all of you listeners to hear it. So if you enjoy the show, please reach out to them on Facebook. Let them know that you heard us talking about them, and maybe they will continue to be a sponsor. That'd be great.
There you go.
Chris, today's interview is one of those that I think we did more prep for than normal. And I say that because it started as a 10-page script, and we cut it down to a 1-page outline. And I can't say enough about how we had to dumb down the smartest guy we know to get this information distilled to where I understood it. But I learned so much doing this interview.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. You think about diesel trucks and diesel owners, rather. And then you think about, like, where we're at in the Midwest. Like, diesel additive, especially winter additive, is something that is kind of a second nature. You know, not having diesel fuel gel and running additives to help combat some of that. So it's crazy that, you know, as long as I've ever owned a diesel, knowing about additive, but then realizing what little I actually knew about it. And Randy Harkema over at Exergy Performance, I mean, hands down, one of the top 3, I would say, most intelligent individuals. And he has a way to articulate information out of his very high standard of intelligence down to someone such as you and I who, you know, I can understand to some degree what he's talking about. I don't have to look at him like I'm staring at a fucking wall. So it's like I said, I learned a lot from it. It was probably one of my more favorable interviews that we have done because I love to learn, especially something that we're around constantly. So yeah. I think without further ado, we should kick it over to that interview.
Randy Harkema, how the hell are you?
You're not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man.
It's cold. It's cold here. What's the temperature? What's it like by you, Randy?
It was just a little bit above 10. I think about 12 degrees this morning as I came to work.
All right. Well, yeah, we're not where Randy is, right? Where Exergy is and where we're at. We're not very far away, so I'm sure we have some of the same type of weather, but that's what it was like here.
Yeah,
so
yeah. That
it's
Midwest.
Struggle bus, man. It's tough right now.
That Midwest winter, and that's really what inspired us to have you on today, Randy, is that Midwest weather and dealing with cold weather and all of the things that brings up with our diesels that Chris and I drive. Guys, we know we've been alluding to it for a while. We've done some testing with the Exergy fuel additive, but when this came up, we sat down and we said, like, hey, Chris, how much do you know about fuel additive?
Yeah, nothing.
And we all know I don't know shit. So
true.
So we thought we would have the smartest guy we know come on and talk a little bit about fuel additive. I think on the show I may have been previously quoted as saying it's mostly snake oil.
Many times.
I think Randy, you might fall on the side that you really believe in the science behind fuel additive, or at least high quality fuel additive.
Yeah, correct. Not a question about that. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dive right in at the top. Randy, tell us how you got your start in diesel performance.
So back on the farm, we had an underground storage tank, and it had a hand crank on it. And in order to fill all the equipment, the way my uncles, my grandpa, and everybody ran things, they'd park tractors around that pump, and it was the little kids, so mine as I was growing up, job then to fill them up, crank all that fuel up out of the tank into the tractors. And that took hours, especially if they backed the combine up. Anyway, so one day, my actually great-grandpa pulls up in a pickup and told me to fill it up. And I said, you sure about this? I kind of thought the guy had lost his mind a little bit. It was a 5.7. It was a 1979 and that was, I think, about the first time that a diesel engine had been put in a full-size pickup. So from there, I thought, well, that's odd, and I kind of followed along. Of course, that engine had a torrid history, but when it ran, I believe they were getting like mid-20s for mileage at the time, which was absolutely phenomenal for a full-size pickup. Anyway, that was the beginning of the story.
Obviously, you have some experience with developing some fuel additive, but I want to just kind of talk in general. What testing can you do on fuel additive besides throwing it in my tank and saying, okay, drive the same as you did last week?
All right. There are several different tests that can be done, and it all kind of depends on how many features you're trying to work into your additive. As we went into developing this one, our main goal was trying to come up with an additive that was going to make the fuel system last longer. To do that, it was going to need to address quite a few different things, and the one that we concentrated on the most was lubricity.
Okay. And I would say of anyone that we could have on the show, Randy has a leg to stand on, being owner of Exergy Performance, right? So they have injectors, modified injectors. We've been using them for years. So you want a product that's going to help make those injectors live and last longer.
Yeah.
Right? So now when you guys started actually getting into this testing, you guys have all the test benches. You guys get injectors that guys have ran in trucks from, for a few years, miles, so on and so forth. So what does that look like, right? When you're in the lab and you're putting this formula together, how do you go into a controlled testing environment? What does that look like?
We get that question fairly often, maybe from a different perspective, and that is people ask, how many miles will my fuel system last now that it has an additive?
Right.
And to actually answer that question, we'd have to run essentially a clone of that truck in the exact same application. In other words, whatever it was doing, whether that's daily driving, towing, what have you, fuel at the same stations, and we'd have to have 6 of those. We'd have to do 3 with additive, 3 without, and basically run all of them to the end of their life to start to be able to estimate, okay, your fuel system will last X number of miles longer.
Wait a minute. Can I just recap that? Can I just recap that test? All you need is just 6 identical trucks, and then to randomly select 3 of them and not let the drivers know, and always use additive on every single fill-up for the entire life of the truck. So, I don't know, 250 to 500,000 miles. And then 2 trucks just have to go do the exact same job every single day. So every single mile, 2 of them go at a time. So it just sounds like we need 3 sets of best friends. I don't get it. What's the problem? I'm just joking, of course. That is what randomized testing looks like. Like, if people want that real world application, like you said, it's just not practical. There's no way that that anybody would be able to put that together. What can you do to kind of help you know that, hey, like, this is an additive that is going to help with longevity, even if it's not that perfect, here's how many more miles additive will help with. Like, how do you know your additive is going to help with longevity at all?
Correct. So to try to measure lubricity, there's been standardized tests that have been developed. The idea is then anyone can have somewhat of an apples-to-apples comparison between additives and from today to 5 years from now, and have something that they can compare against. So it's a controlled test. It's done in a lab. You ideally need to run, if you're going to do a comparison, you need to start with the same base stock for that whole comparison, and then the apples to apples is only valid for that run, that amount of fuel that you bought for that base stock. Change the base stock, the whole relative comparison is going to change again. So it's not easy, but that's about as close as we can get at the moment.
Okay. So there's definitely no secret that the quality of fuel over the years has definitely dropped. Okay, with the additives and things that the oil companies do add into the fuel. what would you say to someone that questions? Well, I can just run ATF or two-stroke oil to add lubricity to the existing fuel compared to additive that you would buy off the shelf.
All right, we've tested both of those actually, and in regard to lubricity, because they're both oil-based. So the idea there is that by adding them, you're going to add some lubricity. It turns out that two-stroke, and the rough ratio that we chose was about a quart to an average tank. It came out to be about 1 to 200 parts, I believe. And what we found is that two-stroke, you got a little bit of an increase in lubricity, not much. ATF actually did a respectable job, I'll say, in that it made a significant improvement in the lubricity of the fuel. However, a quality additive was significantly less, or had significantly better, I'll say, scores than that. So, long story short, you could put those in, and especially with ATF, you probably will make an improvement in lubricity, but then that's all you're doing. You're not treating the other aspects of some of the deficiencies that are in diesel fuel that's ready for sale.
Okay.
I love the first guy who put transmission fluid in his tank.
Probably was an LB7 owner, had white smoke out the tailpipe.
I mean, it was you. It was a 98.5 Cummins, 100% with an S300. That's like, I want to get 30 miles to the gallon.
I've never ever done that, but it's definitely the LB7 guy. It's definitely the LB7 guy.
What? I always love the first guy to try it. Like the two-stroke oil, I almost get it.
Yep.
Because if you're pre-emissions and you're like, well, I don't give a shit, like run it.
Well,
I could see the logic to get you there. But the transmission fluid, did it start as a mistake?
But here's the thing, though. These guys that are adding those lubricants, okay, like, this is a different clientele, different person than someone that believes in additives. But these are guys adding these into the fuel system after the injectors already have 150, 200 rounds.
Yes.
They're trying to Band-Aid or get the injector to last a little longer.
I dig it.
Where additive isn't going to Band-Aid that, right? It's not. But the idea from what I'm gathering so far is it's a cheap insurance to add to the fuel to help with lubricity, help with boosting cetane ratings, and just help overall with the impurities of what fuel you have access to today.
All right, well, we're going to dig in because I know all the words you used, Chris, but I don't know if I have a great handle on what all those things actually are in the real world.
You're right.
First thing I wanted to hit you on, though, Randy, lubricity. Okay, we're talking about lubricity. I understand high-quality additive. It sounds like it's going to outpace any ATF or two-stroke oil that guys are going to DIY into their tank. I love that.
Correct.
Why do I care about lubricity? Yep. Is lubricity just mean that my injectors are going to have less wear and tear on them because I'm running additive?
Basically, yes. The idea is that with increased lubricity, it's just like having essentially a better oil in your engine. The diesel fuel system components need lubricity to stay alive. As we were talking about earlier, over the years, the amount of lubricity in the fuel has decreased. So we need to ideally put that back in somehow. And in addition to that, the latest common rail fuel systems are even higher pressure than obviously the mechanical ones, and even the earlier common rails. They keep going up in pressure. Well, to generate that pressure, to hold that pressure, to be able to switch that pressure on and off for an injection event, all takes higher contact stress / forces on the internal components. So lubricity gets even more important. It becomes a higher sensitivity. The components are more highly sensitive to reduced lubricity than they were before.
Okay. I get that. I think I understand that.
Yeah.
You with it, Chris?
I'm about it. Yeah, I'm right there.
All right.
So more lubricity, less wear on those parts. Even the parts that are just doing the switching, like the valves and the valve seats. We see on the good used injector mods that we do, for example, we'll see injectors with 120,000 miles on them. They look really good yet, and typically we can't work with a set that high because typically it's just too far gone. It's not worth putting the money into. But every now and then one will come along where a guy really wants to give us to give it a try. So we do the baseline testing. Sure enough, they test really good, and we'll call them back and say, hey, you won the lottery today. And and he'll say, yeah, I've been using such and such since I bought the truck. And, oh, okay, all right. We can see that. It makes sense. The deposits are down, the wear and tear is down. Seem to go together.
I kind of like that approach of saying, like, hey, we've been around injectors, injector repairs, injector rebuilds for the history of the company. And there seems to be this continuing theme of, like, hey, guys who are using high-quality additive are having better results when we're going to baseline these. And then you said, okay, well, let's take a scientific approach to figuring out what's a really great additive. Now, Chris, we deal with a lot of testing over here at Duramax Tuner. Right. L5P Turbo, I know we've been telling people we've been testing for 2 years. Honestly, we've been making media for 2 years, which means testing is probably legit been 3, maybe 3.5 years that we've been working on that turbocharger. Mm-hmm. It's been through an unnumbered amount of revisions to get it into a final production stage, right? So Chris and I have this, like, behind-the-scenes kind of understanding of what this looks like. In your experience, how many different compounds do you guys go through and test? Because with a turbo, it's more about, like, well, we have the idea, let's shave this part this way or manipulate this that way. But with chemicals, I don't know. I just imagine, like the Mad Hatter mixing potions, right? Yeah. Right? It's like, they give it a pinch more salt,
Yeah, a little bit of history. So we started actually about 5 years ago, and that was kind of born out of people calling and asking, okay, what do you recommend? Oh, we really haven't looked into this to give an honest, we know this to be the best type of answer, our recommendation. And so we started looking into it and tried to find companies that had published results. And if they weren't published, okay, we'd call them and say, hey, can you give us the data and whatnot? And they'd say, no, not available, or really haven't done it. So it kind of bumped along for a while in that we weren't having success finding someone to really recommend. And we were thinking, too, okay, given the number of inquiries we were getting, if we did find someone that kind of checked all the boxes, we'd rebrand what they had. But after about 2 years of that, we kind of gave up and said, okay, we're going to do our own. So it started about 3 years ago in earnest. We're mechanical engineers here. We do work with fuel systems every day, but we're not chemists. Of course, we've had enough chemistry to be able to communicate with chemists, but that's not our mainstay. So we did partner up with a chemist and also a tribologist. That's somebody that studies the effects of lubrication and friction and the relative wear of surfaces. And started with components, I'll say chemical components that were available to use. And as we ran off different tests and tried to compare ourselves against other additives, we couldn't get it to where, okay, we had something that addressed all these areas and still had the best lubricity available. And what we wound up having to do after quite a few iterations, because, okay, you try one, that didn't quite work. Well, maybe if we change up the mixture rate, we put more of the component that added the lubricity in it, maybe we'll get there with that. And that wouldn't work. And okay, maybe we did hit our target, but the cost got too high. So then we have to back up again. Anyway, through all of this, we wound up having to find chemicals to work with that weren't available on the for blending, at least when we started. We kind of there were new releases as the process went along. So long story short, what we came up with in the end is unique to the Exergy additive. It's not a rebrand. Contains something that wasn't available 3 years ago. So it's a modern, updated product. It's not a rehash of what's been out there before.
Is it
We
tiger
think
blood?
that's one of the reasons why.
You have to tell us if
why-
it's tiger's blood. No Charlie Sheen.
No.
No Charlie Sheen fans. No?
So how many versions would you say before you were able to put a ship it send it formula together? How many formulas do you think you guys went through?
You know what? I didn't keep track after.
Okay.
we thought it was going to be really easy, to be honest. And after like the first 8 months, okay, this isn't going to be easy. But I kind of kept at it, and you get to a point where, okay, it's just kind of frustrating, and you try not to think about how many you've tried. So honestly, I lost track. I don't know.
So
I have to go back and add it up.
Okay. So now, we've kind of gone through the back end of the project, who you had to group in for something like this, experts in certain fields. We, again, know your expertise in your field. What does this additive do? We've talked about the lubricity. With today's standards in fuel, fuel seems to be a little bit more watered down. We run, different types of lift pumps to help keep water out of the system. Does additive help with water separation or corrosion protection in the fuel itself?
Yeah, not all additives do, but yes, ours does. There's a couple others on the market that address it as well. But yes, this additive has a component in it that helps facilitate the separation of water.
Okay.
Wait. How much water is in fuel? Because I've seen water sit on top of fuel that it separates from each other. So how much water is in your diesel fuel?
I mean, it depends on where you go and the quality of that station, I would assume.
Randy, do the rates vary widely? Is it a pretty narrow window of what's allotted in the U.S.?
To be honest, I'd have to go back and look at some studies to be able to answer that question completely. I can say that it's more prevalent now than it has been in the past, due to a couple different factors. One being the ultra-low sulfur standard. I know it's been around for a decade, but in order to achieve that, there's a water treatment of the fuel to strip that sulfur out, and it's quite possible that some of it can get left in the fuel. Also, through the distribution network, pipelines, trucks, things like that, they carry more than just diesel fuel. They carry lots of other components. They sometimes have a high water content. That gets left behind. The blending of biodiesel into the standard diesel that's ready for sale. Biodiesel has a little bit more propensity than diesel itself to absorb water. So all of it leads to a higher water risk than in the past. The exact percent that you'd find typically in a ready-to-sell diesel fuel, I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Sure. So Tesla gets self-driving cars and diesel trucks get more water in the fuel.
Oh, here we
Awesome.
go.
Thanks.
So with the additive, right? So I personally I have a couple local stations to me where they actually sell straight number 2. They don't actually sell biodiesel.
No BioBlend?
No BioBlend. I drive out of my way to this, to
that's
this station.
rare.
The additive is going to be more productive than what it would be if I was getting pump diesel from a bio station or a bio tank, correct?
More productive.
That might have been the wrong term, but the effect of the additive is going to be based off of the quality of fuel to start with. If I'm working with a better
correct.
quality of fuel, the additive is going to be that much better for the vehicle.
Interesting. I like that.
It'll get the fuel to an overall higher level or higher quality. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No question about that. And you're right. You kind of stepped on another topic, and that is the effect of any additive is a bit dependent on the base crude that the fuel was made from. So to be honest, the better the crude that it was made from, the less gain you'll get from the additive. In other words, there just isn't that much space left. The fuel that's made very poor, well, I shouldn't say very poorly, with less quality, so it comes from a lower grade of crude, will have a bigger increase in all of these areas once you add an additive to it.
I get that.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a ceiling. Okay, it's not a magic cure-all, right? Fuel additive.
Yeah.
It will optimize what you have. So if you start off with better grade fuel, sure, you're going to get to that ceiling quicker, right? So it won't be as dramatic of a difference from before and after. But if you start off
That's
and you're
correct.
running crap fuel, like I probably am, then
Cheap's never good,
get
Paul.
to that.
Yep.
Never mind. We're gonna pass on that
Correct.
joke, Chris. Yeah. Okay. So I got you. Okay. So the difference of where you started, where your baseline is, and where the ceiling is just a bigger gain.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, that makes sense to me.
I gotta, as we're talking about all this, everything that we've been discussing is based off of longevity, lubricity. What am I expecting here? Can we see gains in power? Like, is there anything that we can actually see improve power-wise?
You know, Chris, you hit on this earlier. You said cetane, and I'm going to be honest, listeners. I've thrown cetane around as though I know what it is.
Yeah.
But it's just magic juice that they put into stuff.
You think so?
I have no idea what cetane is.
Well, let's have Randy
I
fact
no
check you
fucking
on this.
clue.
How about that?
Randy,
Randy-
can you break it down for us?
Okay, sure. So cetane is actually the measure. I could get into the test of how it's measured, but it's a measure of how well the fuel spontaneously combusts.
Okay.
The higher the cetane, the easier the fuel spontaneously combusts. And by spontaneous, I guess what I'm saying there is, in the case of a diesel, when the temperatures inside the combustion chamber rise because of the compression, a higher cetane will light off quicker than the lower cetane.
So kind of like octane and gasoline, essentially. Same effect.
Pardon? I'm sorry, did you?
Like it'd be like comparing like different fuel octanes, like in gasoline. You know, 89 versus 91, some degree. At least that's how it's registering in my head.
Okay, you're on the right track, but you got to flip it around.
Okay.
In that octane, the higher the octane, actually, the less likely it is to spontaneously combust.
Okay.
Stability.
Stability.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Combustion
Makes sense.
stability.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
In a gasoline engine, you want the combustion event to begin with your spark plug and not with spontaneous combustion. So as compression ratios go up, as boost levels go up, you need higher octane to keep that from happening.
Okay. 10-4. I'm
Yep.
on the same page.
God, you sound foolish, Chris.
It was a good question.
It was legit a good question.
didn't
'cause
know.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fool.
Okay.
So in a controlled test, you know, where I'm going to imagine here that additive is going to help aid higher cetane levels, that will equivalent into potentially more power.
Potentially, yes. That being said, do you usually see a power gain with it? I can't say that we've done a test on a dyno where you could see. I mean, in theory, yes, but I think the amount is so small that you probably aren't going to be able to measure it. Is
Okay.
what I'm trying to say. Will it help cold starts? Yes. Will it help the engine run smoother? When it's cold? Yes. Will it help the fuel burn more completely? Yes. To say, yeah, you're going to get a measurable, whether that's on a dyno or with the other dyno that everyone's equipped with, I don't think you're going to see it. No.
Okay, that's interesting to me because you're describing a more efficient fuel burn by increasing your cetane rating. But yeah, okay, I get it. You're not actually increasing fuel quantity or air quantity,
Right.
so you're probably not going to come out in more horsepower.
You're gaining overall
It's
efficiency of the fuel burning in the cylinder.
I like that.
So what does it do for like emissions then? I mean, let's talk about like a DPF equipped truck.
That's a good question, Chris, because and we'll get a little bit more into our personal results, but your Volkswagen no emissions EGR, but like no DPF, and my BMW DPF EGR DEF the works. Yeah,
I have it in my
think
truck
we
as well,
both.
too.
Yeah, and we'll give you guys a little taste of this. Both had really good luck with cold starts.
Yeah.
In fact, such good luck that I was thinking if I triple my fuel additive dose, I probably won't even need glow plugs.
Wow. Okay.
Right, Randy?
You sound like a fool,
well,
Paul.
perhaps every engine's going to be a little different, but yeah, it should improve the ease of cold start. Yes.
Yeah, and listeners, I'm just joking. Please don't put in triple the amount of additive because you need glow plugs.
They heard you say it, Paul.
Please don't do that. I was just joking. Okay, no, but I like that. I get that. Randy, let's be real though. When guys are talking to me about fuel additive, it's because they want to talk about MPGs. Can we just can we shoot this big old pink elephant in the room?
30 miles per gallon.
Minimum.
Yeah, no, not quite. When it comes to mileage, to be completely, again, honest and transparent, as we went through this, that wasn't something we were focused on. And as we got to the end, and towards the end, I should say, and we started doing in-vehicle testing, it's like, okay, I hope we get something. Hope we don't go backwards or anything like that. We shouldn't, in theory. What we've got in the, I'll say, limited testing that we've done, I mean, we've done a handful. Some of them have been for pretty long periods, like 6,200 rather, and 6,500 miles, with and without. That's probably the longest one we've done so far, and we've got more in process. And there's several smaller ones that we've done as well. But and these so far have all been with emission-equipped trucks. We've got some without now in process. Don't have that data back yet, but with emission-equipped trucks, so they're running traps. We've seen over 10%. I mean, some as high as 11.5, and so indications are good that the mileage improvement is real. Wouldn't put a name to a number yet, but preliminary indications are that it's maybe in the neighborhood of 10%.
Well, I mean, that's significant.
That's what I'm seeing. Yeah, 100%. So I was joking about how I've never measured fuel mileage.
Yeah.
I think since I started working here, I've always lived so close to the shop that it didn't make sense to care. But now I pay a little bit of attention. I'm like a 30-minute ride back and forth, and it's all like 2 lanes. There's only probably a half-mile stretch that the speed limit's even 55. So I usually don't do more than 70, 75 miles an hour on the way to work. I'm just, everybody who knows me knows I actually drive like a grandma. I probably max out at like 45. But anyways, what I have noticed is I was sitting around like 18.5 to 19.6 are kind of my averages of where I was sitting on all stock. Done nothing to it. And then, with the additive, I was up to like 19.6 to like 20.22, or I'm sorry, 20.2-ish. It's kind of right where I was sitting. So I'd say that's right in line. I would expect it to go up a little more if I would not let my car idle for 20 minutes before I drive it every day.
You like a warm vehicle. I
really do. I really do. What about you, Chris? What have you seen?
The mileage, I would say, for my car is staying consistent, but it's colder now, so I am letting the car idle more. My girlfriend won't even get in the car unless it's warmed up for 15 minutes. Like, at the TDI, it takes forever to warm up. But mileage-wise, stayed roughly the same, but I've definitely seen some improvements when it comes to the cold start. Yeah,
the cold start, that really is no joke. I really have been having really good, because I probably definitely do need 2 glow plugs in there.
Probably, definitely.
but I've noticed it's definitely not as harsh. It doesn't have that like really rough knock that my car usually does, even in the summer when I first start it. So it definitely has been operating smoother at idle and getting up to temp quicker. So that's been really nice. Randy, one of the last things I wanted to hit you on is winter blend. God, Chris, do you remember that 4500 Kodiak that I drove for a hot minute?
Yeah.
The tank on that is directly under the bed and completely exposed. So I had parked the truck outside back then. I still do.
He left an eighth of a tank.
In it.
Still does.
100% true. My car literally is on an eighth of a tank this moment in the parking lot. It
was 0 degrees last night.
Yeah, check. check. Well, I wanted to finish the testing. I didn't want to fill up before I came in. This is
Dude.
the end of that tank that I ran.
You're lucky that the thing
fuel.
started.
It took me 2 weeks to go through a tank of fuel.
That's
but
impressive.
Yeah. But anyways, that tank is the only tank I ever had gel up because it sat outside through a polar vortex. I left an eighth of a tank and it got to -20 with the wind chill. Woke up, truck would go a mile down the road, chug out, stop, starve itself for fuel. I ran probably way too much diesel 911, which we all know. Shout out to the fact that we've all tried it and had varied results. I tried a bunch of different stuff that I found at the gas station, right? So, like, does fuel additive prevent gelling if you have a high-quality additive? And then the second part of my question is, how the hell do I know what's a high-quality additive?
All right. Yes, an additive that's formulated for gelling should help. The way that our winter blend is done should have freeze. So there's two things that can happen. One is water in the tank can freeze. Once that freezes, probably about the only way to turn that around is to warm the truck back up. The other thing is that the fuel, the wax in the fuel, the paraffins will start to clump together the colder they get. And standard diesel fuel, if it's not treated, by treated I mean from the refinery, the distributors in the wintertime are required to treat it for cold weather. And there's really no standard for that. So it can kind of vary from station to station, and it's going to vary from latitude as well. So from north to south, the distributors are going to treat it different because they're basically just looking for it not to gel up in their general area. So that's another thing. But the waxes will essentially start to clump together. To make a bit of an analogy, the wax compounds themselves are formed they have a physical shape that's something like a bunch of them are like Velcro, and when it gets cold enough, they start clumping together. And so what the additive does is it essentially fills in those fills in the Velcro so that they can't clump together, and it'll lower the point at which the gelling will start once the additive is in there and working. So if you blend it right and with a typical base crude, we're down to about 65 low in terms of when that process will start. So that should get you through just about anything, at least in the lower 48 here.
That's such a cool analogy.
Yeah.
I actually get that. Okay, so it's like, I think we've all looked at gelling and kind of understand that, like, your fuel ends up building up like wax, and that's what gelling is, right? Like, we just call it gel, but it's really paraffin wax that's already in there.
Correct.
But I never thought about, like, how those particles look like under a microscope, and it sounds like that's what you're saying. Like, if you were to zoom in on one of those under a microscope, it would look like Velcro that has all these sticky pieces that want to connect to each other once it starts getting cold, and the additive actually kind of smooths that out so that they can't connect to each other. I love that. I actually get that in my head.
I understand that.
Yep. It's a rough analogy. A chemist might cringe at that analogy, but that's...
If you're a chemist and you're listening to our show,
that's awesome.
Shoot me an email. I want to say thank you.
I thought that was a way to try to simplify it and get the picture across. But yes.
Nice. So, I mean, I was going to ask a question about that, and it pretty much summed that up. But I was going to ask, does the additive potentially, is it counterproductive to the fuel depending on what additive there is, right, for the different anti-gelling? But with the way that this was explained, the additive is going to work with pretty much any of the winter prepped fuel, depending on where you're located in the country.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Correct. Whatever prep they've done to it, this will just make it better. It'll enhance it.
I love that.
I like
okay,
that.
And then second part of the question, we've all been at the truck stop, we've all been at the gas station, and you're like, man, I know my shit's going to gel up tonight if I don't put something in it. How do I know what's good?
That's tough. Based on what we've done in terms of looking at what are in all the different competitors. Some are great at marketing, and they've been doing it for decades. They're in every truck stop, and when we went to test them in some of these areas, they were the worst ones.
What?
Yeah, so it's tough. I can't see that there's a rule of thumb to be able to tell good from bad. You almost have to go on other people's experience. To be honest, I don't know how else to distinguish it. That or find people that have done their homework. That means the manufacturer, which is tough to say too, because some of them are very big brand name companies. So you could assume, okay, yeah, well, they've been around forever. It must have done their homework. But in reality, those were some of the poorest performing ones that we tested.
And I kind of get that, because if you really pull back and you think about how technology works, and so often when we think about technology, I think about the two guys in the room both looking at their cell phones. But chemistry, I think, has that as well, and that's something that you had kind of alluded to at the top of the show, is when Exergy was developing this formula, you guys were bringing in elements that were brand new, that had never been used before in anybody's additive. But if you think about the brand that's been out for 30 years or whatever, pick a number, how often are they going in and doing the testing and spending 3 to 5 years of developing a new formula, as opposed to just saying, we already own this market, people already recognize our name, keep buying the stuff we've been selling you for years.
Right.
And never really, as a consumer, I think you got to pull back and you got to step back and you got to think about, like, what is best for my truck, not what is most popular on the shelf, right?
Yeah. So for starters, just so we're on the same page, I'm going through the show notes from this because my eyes
nobody
looking at
nobody at home would have known if I was telling the truth or not if you would have just got up and told me, what are you talking about? You're crazy, Paul. Like, you totally could have played that off.
You are, but so I'm looking at that. Thanks.
Randy, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show today. I'm sure there's something that I should have asked that we haven't. Were there any other topics or pointers that you want to kind of cover at this time?
Just a couple. One, the winter formula is the same formula as our summer blend. It just has additives that address things needed in cold weather. In other words, all the improvements, all the benefits of the summer are in the winter. There's products out there that are formulated just for winter. This is not one of those. I think that's a big thing we want to make sure everybody understands. The next, it goes a little bit along with the conversation we just had in regard to some of the branding and marketing. Check out, or if you get time, do the math on what you're actually paying to treat one tank of fuel. You might be surprised at some of the major brands what they cost to treat a tank of fuel versus the treat ratio that ours is at. We've done the comparisons, obviously, to set the pricing, and I was shocked. I guess that's what I'm trying to say at what some additives were getting to treat one tank. So another heads up. There's a big difference there.
I don't understand. I buy the bottle, I pour it in the tank.
Well, there's ratios to how many gallons, Paul.
Yes, Chris.
All right.
Jesus. Sometimes I don't understand you.
Yeah, I know. I get it. You sound like my wife. Okay. Those are both really good points, because I certainly would not plan on standing in the gas station and going, what's the cost per tank?
No,
like,
I would look at the cost of the bottle.
Cost, right? And like, yeah, sure, I'll buy this one. Like that's as far as I would have thought of. That's a good heads up, man. That's some good consumer advice.
I'm thinking about that more in when you look at the cost per tank, and if there's more, right, that you have to add from a competitor or a third party, right?
Yeah.
How much more filler are you essentially putting in the tank, and they're just relying on their marketing and their presence in the industry?
I think we're just going to let that question hang. I think that's a good question. Randy, hey, man, we appreciate you taking so much time with our listeners today. Who do you want to give a shout-out to?
Mainly, I guess, the guys internally here. It's not like we had the whole company working on it, but it did take a lot longer than we thought to bring this to market. And there was a lot of patience that was tried as we tried to get to that point. So thanks to them in regard to the topic today. And then our loyal customers over the years. You probably can tell we're not focused on marketing too heavily here at Exergy. We mainly rely on word of mouth and the quality of our product to sell itself. And over the years, the industry has been very good to us, and want to say thank you for that.
That's awesome, man. Randy, I want to say thank you again for taking your time out and talking with our listeners and educating Chris and I a little bit on this fuel additive topic. I think we're really excited. Chris, we already mentioned we've been running the additive now. I think I'm all the way through a tank of fuel. I think you're about halfway, three-quarters.
Yeah, halfway through.
We're going to keep running it, man. Like that's what I can tell our listeners, guys, is I've tried it. The results are there. I think it's a no-brainer. So if you're looking for it, they can actually, Chris, they can follow up with you if you want to get your hands on some Exergy additive.
Been starting to move through some cases and some bigger bottles and stuff. So, listeners, if you have any questions, send me an email, cmkey@duramaxtuner.com, or call over at the shop, 815-568-7920, extension 2121.
Awesome. And Randy, if they want to find out more about you or follow along with Exergy Performance, how can our listeners get a hold of you?
At this time, it's probably best to call direct with any questions you have. We're going to try to improve our social media presence, also what we have out on the web. At the moment, though, if you have specific questions, best to call our performance line. It's 616-551-4330.
Excellent. All right, guys. Like we said, man, that's just a lot of information for you. Hey, if you want to learn more, feel free. Reach out to Chris Emke. Chris, how can they get a hold of you so you can talk more about the fuel additives and other Exergy products?
So my email is cmke@duramaxtuner.com, or they can reach me by phone. That's 815-568-7920, extension 2121.
Love that. Guys, today we are going to hear from Jeremy Garnett, our super tech here at Duramax Tuner. He worked on an LLY on some turbo vane sticking issues, walks through the diagnostics, walks through repair and replacement, some of the common problems, and hey, he's also going to have a pro tip for you guys out there. All right, guys, and now it's time for our new segment. Super Tech Jeremy Garnett is going to come on the show as often as we can and talk to us about a truck that he's had in the shop. Jeremy, how the hell are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for joining us on the show again. I listened to last week's episode. You sounded awesome, bro.
Yeah, that was second time on. I felt pretty good.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm glad to have you back, and I think we got a fun one to dig into today. So why don't you tell our listeners what truck are we talking about?
We got a 05 LOY with turbo issues, so we'll go in and try to figure out what's wrong with it and go from there.
The LLY. Guys, you've heard me say some different things about the LLY over the years. They have some factory flaws, right? Like right from the OEM. This age in their life, 15, 16 years old, most of them have some of those basic flaws fixed. The intake horn, the fuel pressure relief valve, the 5-speed transmission, the 2.7 injector harness. All these are common things, but this truck you had mentioned has some miles on it.
Yeah, that had all the good stuff on it.
So somebody's already gone through. They've done some upgrades to it. I noticed it also had some WC fab piping in there.
Yep. Had hot and cold pipes done to it, intake done to it. So
yeah, hell yeah. All right, good job getting those WC fab parts on your truck. What was the customer's complaint when he brought the truck in? What were you trying to figure out?
Well, the truck came in, had engine codes, and the vanes weren't moving in the turbocharger. So try to figure out why the vanes weren't moving and what tools we used to actually figure that out, and if it was a bad part or bad charger, things like that.
Those VVTs, man, that can be a real rat's nest of problems because you initially, I know from like on the phone diagnostics, I'd tell somebody, well, you want to test your solenoid. But where do you, somebody who actually knows what you're doing, where do you start with this?
I actually started with the solenoid. So that's the first thing I did is I started with the solenoid. What we do here, since we have so many, I just took the solenoid off, put a new solenoid on, still didn't work. Then what I did is I'm like, okay, let me test the wiring to make sure that it actually has proper voltage. So
Right.
check the voltage on it, and everything checked out fine. Still stuck at 70%. The veins aren't moving. So okay, let me try a different vein position sensor, see if that's wrong. Okay,
Yeah.
or the sensor is just not reading properly.
That happens too.
Yep.
It's not as common as the solenoid, but it's totally possible.
Yep. So I'm like, okay, well, vein position sensor worked properly too. So I was like, okay, well, we have two problems: not enough oil pressure, or the veins are stuck inside the charger. So we start pulling the charger apart on the truck as much as we can, and then see if we can get the veins to move. And it was still stuck. So at that point, now it's time to remove the charger.
Time to come all the way out,
Yep.
baby. All right. So that's a tough one because if I'm driving my truck normally on the road, and maybe I'm not really in tune to the sound of the turbo and the sound of veins changing, and that's not something that I'm necessarily expecting or looking for, that could be an easy one to overlook. What kind of drivability symptoms would somebody get with stuck veins?
Oh, that thing's just going to lag and not want to move, and not try to get out of, in fifth gear, just going to feel like a piece of dog crap.
It's so true. You do, because what you're doing is the veins move the air on the back side of the turbo, so the turbine side, around the wheel and change the aspect ratio of the distance between that wheel and essentially the exhaust housing, which is all going to impact your spool up.
Right.
So if the veins aren't moving, if they're stuck at 70% or whatever, at 4%, you're wildly limiting the operating range of that turbo,
Right.
which is the whole advantage of a variable vane turbo is it
Right.
has a wider operating range.
Yeah, you'll have really good down low or really good high up high. So
That's it. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
Okay. So you start to dig into this. You do some of the basic tests. Now, I know from history, every truck that comes in gets a boost test.
Yep.
When do you boost test this truck?
I boosted the truck before. Let's just make sure that's not the problem or cause the problem.
Yeah.
Let's make sure it didn't overspin the turbo and make sure that the veins just didn't get stuck because it overspun, or
Sure.
it got stuck or it got too hot,
Yeah.
So we boost tested it before, realized there was no boost leaks, and then, now it's time to take it apart.
Gotcha. Okay. Topside creeper, or do you lift the truck in the air and pull the trans?
Topside creeper on this one.
What a pain in the
Yeah.
ass.
Trying to lift a 50-pound charger out of there. Yeah.
It's also on pretty much all of the Duramaxes, but especially before the L5P. It's all the way at the back end of the
Yeah.
block from the top of the engine bay. So just getting the creeper close enough up on the truck, getting your arms stretched all the way over and all the way down and back in there, and then it's a really goofy angle to bring that thing up and out.
And you're laying on your belly quite a bit.
Yeah, and then back in, same pain in the ass because now you got to line up the bolts,
Right?
And you have no guides, it's
Right, and then you have to torque them properly too once it's in. So just trying to get it torqued and.
Now, I have seen a lot of turbo swaps go with raising the truck in the air, dropping the trans.
You have to do that on an LML.
On an LML, they have to.
Yep.
Why not do it on an LOY? Why choose to do the topside creep?
It's just doable. It's
Okay.
just there's more room between the firewall and the turbo
Gotcha.
on an LY LBZ compared to an LML.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So you guys got this charger out. You took a look at it. You found charger had an issue.
Yep.
Period. Right?
Yeah.
So new charger back in it?
Yep. New charger's back in it, but taking the charger out, of course, you run into problems. Bolts break in the manifolds in the back of the charger and stuff like that. So now we're trying to extract bolts or replace manifolds.
That's
so
the worst.
Yeah, it's not just a easy job. One broken bolt away from a 10-hour job.
That's a good line. I
Yeah.
like that. You're one broken bolt away from a 10-hour job.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it books out as a pretty simple job.
Right.
Right? Like, turbo swap, X amount of hours. We're not going to get into specifically what the book says.
Right.
But it is funny to see what the reality is of sure, if the truck's in perfect condition, you have no other problems, that is how much time it should take. Reality is very often quite far out from there. All right. Well, I like that we have a good common problem that I think a lot of guys run into, and some pretty obvious diagnosis. Guys, we're not going to walk you through how to swap a turbo
Right.
through a podcast. That's not going to be helpful for anyone. But Jeremy, what would be helpful as a pro tip? If I am me, who doesn't know anything, and I go out to my truck and I tell you, hey, I'm going to go swap out the turbo, what's a good piece of advice you'd give me on my way out the door?
Just try to route the wires back the way that they were, especially with aftermarket parts. Guys, they pinch them, they don't route them properly, they get pinched, they get hot, they burn. Just route the wires, even if you have to use zip ties, just zip tie it and make sure everything's secure.
So you're saying I shouldn't just have like an extra 3 feet of wire under the hood rubbing around everywhere dragging?
Now, just don't run it over top of everything to try to plug it in. Just, take the extra couple of minutes and try to put it the way that it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hard to beat, man.
Every day. We see it every day.
Every day. It is funny. It is one of those where I know exactly what you mean, because you'll pop the hood and you just immediately, you can hear a tech groan from across the shop. Just, oh, again? You're like, guys, I don't know that this is your problem, but this is a problem for you, for sure.
Oh, it creates problems.
Yeah, guaranteed. Awesome. Well, Jeremy, I definitely want to say thank you for joining us on the show. I think this is a really fun segment. Guys, we're going to keep doing this. Give me some feedback, man. Hit us up on Fans of Diesel Performance Podcast. You can tag Jeremy Garnett. I believe he's in the group. Mm-hmm. He's nodding in agreement
yes,
on the
I
podcast.
Am.
Yes,
yep.
Absolutely. All right, man. Tag Jeremy with any questions you have for our Super Tech. All right, guys, we're back. Man, I like Jeremy as an addition to the show. Chris, what do you think?
Jeremy's a really good tech. He's definitely well decorated. He's been doing this for a very long time, but he also has an attention to detail. So he's someone that when I have my truck worked on in the shop, I tend to try to request him as a tech to work on mine. I know it's going to be done right.
Only if I'm not available.
So
right. If I'm not available, then you ask for Jeremy.
If you're not available, it's a different
Gotcha.
story.
Okay.
Paul,
okay.
I wouldn't trust you to wash my wheels. But it's nice. I get on the phone with guys, and I have a general knowledge of how to do things. I've used tools and wrenched on things a little bit in the past, but by no means am I a mechanic. So it's always nice to hear directly from the techs themselves, to have that clear understanding and that clear vision of what they have going on. And I think Jeremy articulates that very, very well.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Hey, guys, we really appreciate you sticking around, listening to the entire show. Chris and I are going to wrap it up here, and then we're going to kick it over. The end of the show is going to be our top 3 EFI Live error codes. This is a great knowledge base article. Just Google knowledge base and DuramaxTuner.com. You'll come right up to it. Or you can visit the website, DuramaxTuner.com, and go to the top on Learn More, and you can get to the knowledge base there. For today, this has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Hemke.
Thanks for listening. Hey, guys, I am going to be reading you a knowledge base article from Duramax Tuner this week, and it's going to be the top 3 EFI Live error codes that we see. EFI Live error codes always start with a $sign, so we're talking about if you have an AutoCal or a V2 and you're going to flash a truck, and it kicks back a $sign error code. So $sign 0194, that's write failure. I'll just tell you right now, this usually means the target file system is full. So if you're programming BBX configuration data, try reformatting the config file system using the drop-down option on the program button. Then you can program the BBX configuration data again. Basically what happens is the BBX is your black box flashing information that the V2 or the AutoCal will need to be able to communicate with those ECMs. Well, in standard operation, we might put gas, diesel, every year of diesel, every EFI Live supported diesel ECM and TCM, and then we may add a bunch of gas ones. So in a regular small file, a tuning file, we're not going to overload the space on the unit. However, some of the newer trucks require bigger files, and that's when we start to run into these issues, most commonly. So again, 0194, it probably just means that the target file system is full. In other words, you have too much already saved on your AutoCal or V2. You can fix that by adjusting your BBX settings. If you need more help with that or anything else with your EFI Live, give us a call here, 815-568-7920. Second most common EFI Live error code that we have found is the $sign 0281. This means no data received or key not in run position. I'll just tell you from 5 years on the phone, 80% of the time, your key's not in the run position. So usually if you get 0281, what it's telling you is that the AutoCal or V2 is not able to communicate with the ECM. I assume you already have it plugged into the OBD2 port because that's how it powered up, but now it's not able to send any messages. So if you don't have the key in the on position, it won't work. And so many times we get calls around this. There are some other potentials that could cause this problem. I've run into it when we have aftermarket electronics like a remote start or something like that wired in through the ignition. I've also had it come up on older trucks just if they had like an aftermarket head unit. So you may want to pop out the aftermarket head unit or any other aftermarket electronics and try to flash again. There are also a handful of fuses under the hood that you can pull if you're looking for more details on that. Again, visit the knowledge base or give us a call over at Duramax Tuner. Number 3 most common EFI Live error code is $0333 security access denied. Hey, if you've gotten this one, it can be frustrating. You could try a couple of different things. First thing I would do is I would kick over to a pass-through flash if you're flashing with an AutoCal. That's referred to as black box flashing. So if you can kick over, you could use your AutoCal in a pass-through. So you bring out a PC laptop with EFI Live software installed on it. You go to a pass-through flash. You could use V8 now to do this. And when you're doing that, you'll have the option to assume lock may be faulty and try alt keys. Then retry your operation. So then just try to flash it like that. A lot of times that'll get you around it. There are some older trucks out there that if they've ever been flashed, something happens and they're just never going to release that security access denied. Other times it'll mean that like a previous tuner has tuned your truck, even if you don't know about it, and they have locked the ECM, and the only way to get that unlocked is to get the original tuner to tune it. Older used trucks run into this as a headache. If you have something newer, it's most likely never going to be an issue. Thank you so much for listening, guys. If you want to learn more, please visit the knowledge base over at DuramaxTuner.com. I know all the words you used, Chris, but I don't know if I have a great handle on what all those things actually are in the real world.